There was an envelope on the windowsill of the boys' room. Yellow, sealed with medical tape. Written in a child's careful slanting hand. For whoever finds this, something is wrong. No one had opened it. Not the estate manager who dusted that sill every Tuesday. Not the doctor who came and went with her leather bag and her practiced smile. Not the father who stood in that doorway some nights, unable to make himself go in. The envelope had been sitting there for 31 days. The boy who wrote it had been getting weaker for every one of them. She was a cleaning woman, a certified nursing assistant between jobs, 42 years old, $14.75 an hour when she was earning anything at all. 2 buses from the west side to reach a house worth $40 million on the north shore of Lake Michigan. She almost hadn't come. What she would find inside those walls would change everything. But what those walls had been hiding about her, about a choice she made 9 years ago, that would break something open that time alone could not heal. Before we continue, drop a comment right now and tell me where in the world you are watching from. What time is it there? Because what happens next inside the Callister estate is going to remind you that the most important person in the room is not always the one with the title. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with me. You will not want to miss a single moment of this story. The alarm went off at 4:47 in the morning, the way it always did on work days, except that for the past 6 weeks there had been no work days, and Amani Voss had been setting it anyway. She did not know why, exactly. Some habits are harder to break than the circumstances that made them. She lay in the dark of her bedroom on West Huron Street, listening to the radiator knock against the wall the way it had knocked every morning for 11 years. And she stared at the water stain on the ceiling she had long ago decided looked like the outline of Louisiana. She had 8 140C severies in her checking account. Rent was $100, due in 11 days. Her mother's insulin and metformin ran 3 440s at the end of every month. That left $407 for everything else. Groceries, transit, the phone bill she was already 3 weeks behind on. She got up at 5 and made coffee. The kitchen was small enough that she could touch both walls if she stretched her arms. She had painted it herself 3 years ago, a warm yellow she chose from a sample strip at the hardware store on Chicago Avenue, because she wanted at least one room in her life that felt like morning. The paint was starting to peel near the window. She noticed it every day and had not fixed it yet. She drank her coffee standing at the counter, listening to her mother breathe in the back room. Dottie, 71 years old, type 2 diabetes, disease that had simply decided to stop cooperating. Dottie had moved in 2 years ago after her Englewood apartment became unaffordable, and Amani had rearranged her entire life around the logistics of that love without once calling it a sacrifice. It wasn't one. It was just what you did. You showed up, you made room. You stood at the counter at 5 in the morning and did the math one more time. She had been a certified nursing assistant for 14 years. She had been unemployed for 43 days. The job at Meridian Home Care had ended on a Tuesday in a conference room that smelled of dry erase markers and old carpet. The regional manager had slid a single sheet of paper across the table, insubordination. She had read the word twice. Then, I reported a drug interaction, a real one. The patient could have had a cardiac event. The manager had nodded with the expression of a man who had decided the outcome before she walked in. We need staff who trust the clinical team. She had not trusted the clinical team. 3 weeks later, her patient, Mr. Aubrey Hines, 78, who kept 3 photographs of his late wife on his nightstand and sometimes called Amani by his daughter's name because it made him feel better, was admitted to Rush University Medical Center with acute cardiac dysrhythmia. The exact interaction she had flagged, the one she had been fired for flagging. She had called the unit to ask about him. The nurse said he was stable. Amani had stood in her yellow kitchen and said thank God out loud to no one. She had looked up her rights the night she was let go, searching terms she had never needed before. Wrongful termination, whistleblower protection, nursing assistant rights, Illinois. What she found was this. Under OSHA's whistleblower protection statutes, healthcare workers had the right to report patients' safety concerns without retaliation, but only at facilities with 50 or more employees. Meridian Home Care employed 47. She was 3 workers short of the law caring about what had happened to her, 3 workers short of justice. She had closed the browser and gone to sleep. At 7:23 the following evening, her phone rang. A woman from Lakeshore Staffing Agency, her voice carrying the efficiency of someone working through a call list. Emergency placement, private residence in Lakeshore North. Previous housekeeper departed without notice. Light housekeeping, 3rd floor. $19.50 an hour. Can you start tomorrow? $19.50. Lakeshore North, the woman added. 2 blocks north of Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Something moved through Amani then. Small and quick, like a door opening in a room she kept locked. She couldn't name it. Almost recognition, almost something else, gone before she could look at it directly. She set her coffee down. She needed the money. She said yes. At 5:14 the next morning, she was at the bus stop on Chicago Avenue in the dark canvas bag over one shoulder, thermos in hand, coat pulled tight against a wind off Lake Michigan that had no interest in the fact that it was technically April. She had worn her good shoes, not cleaning shoes, her interview shoes, the black flats in the box on the top shelf of her closet. Her mother had told her once to always wear your good shoes to a new job, because you never know which direction the day is going to take you. The second bus let her off at 6:44. She walked 4 blocks east toward the lake into a neighborhood where the houses stopped looking like houses and started looking like decisions made by people who had never once counted a cost. Iron gates, stone facades, windows wider than the entire wall of her kitchen. She stopped in front of the address. A small placard beside the gate read simply, Callister, 6:52 in the morning, 8 minutes early. She stood there for a moment, the canvas bag strap worn smooth in her right hand, and looked up at the house. Glass and pale stone, 3 floors, a long driveway of dark pavers leading to a front door that seemed designed to remind you of your size before you reached it. The garden had gone untended, grass just long enough to suggest that someone had stopped caring about it recently. A child's basketball lay on its side near the path, half deflated, waterlogged from rain. She noticed the basketball the way she always noticed things. Quietly, filed it away. She almost turned back. 1 full second she stood there and ran through all of it. The 1,847 tenths, the yellow kitchen peeling at the edges, her mother's medication, Mr. Hines' 3 photographs, and she thought, I could go home. But Janelle's voice came the way it sometimes did, at the edges of decisions. Not accusing, just present. You know when something matters, you've always known. Amani picked up her bag, pressed the call button at 6:53 in the morning, and the iron gate opened slowly. Like it was tired of letting people in, she went through. Dwayne Callister had been awake since 3:41 in the morning. He had not slept past 4 in 11 months. His doctor had offered medication for it twice, and both times Dwayne had said no in the polite, final way that men who have built things from nothing say no to things they have decided are weakness. He stood now at the window of his third-floor study, a mug of coffee going cold in his right hand, and watched the darkness over Lake Michigan begin to thin at its edges. The water was black, then gray, then something between the two that had no name. He had a board meeting at 9, a $340 million freight contract with a Memphis logistics group that his VP called the deal of the decade. He did not think about any of it. He thought about his son. Theo had vomited twice the night before. The second time, at 11:47, Dwayne had heard it through the wall and gone to the doorway of the boys' room and stood there watching Dr. Holden move efficiently around the bed, adjusting the IV line, speaking in her low professional voice. Theo had looked up and said, "Hi, Dad," in a voice so tired it barely made a sound. Dwayne had said hi back. He had not gone in. He did not know how to go in anymore without feeling like he was bringing the weight of his helplessness into a room that already had too much weight in it. That was the thing no one told you. Watching your child be sick for 2.5 years didn't just exhaust you. It slowly removed your sense of yourself as someone capable of helping. Every specialist he had hired, Johns Hopkins, Mayo, Cleveland Clinic, the immunologist from London who charged $28,000 for a single consultation and left without a diagnosis, all of it. And still Theo lay in that bed getting smaller. Dwayne set the cold coffee down on his desk. Next to it was a photograph. He kept only one photograph on his desk. Renee, 34 years old, laughing at something just outside the frame, her hair loose, holding a positive pregnancy test up to the camera like it was a trophy, which was exactly what it had been, because they had tried for 3 years before Theo, and every month of those 3 years had cost something that did not have a name in any language Dwayne knew. She had died 14 months after that photograph was taken. A complication during delivery. She had survived briefly, long enough for an emergency transfusion, blood type B negative, from an anonymous donor who happened to be present, happened to match, happened to say yes. That blood had given Renee 6 more weeks, long enough to hold Theo once, long enough to name him. He had tried to find the donor, for 2 years quietly through private channels. In 2018, the investigator came back with this. The donor was a woman. She had requested full anonymity. When approached indirectly, she declined to be identified. She said she had not done anything special. Dwayne had closed the file. He had never been able to close the feeling. He heard the front gate buzz at 6:53, the new housekeeper. He turned from the window, sat at his desk, and picked up the Memphis contract. There was always work to do. He did not know her name. He did not know what she had been carrying for 9 years. He did not know that directly above him, his son had placed a letter on a windowsill and waited 31 days for someone to find it. He did not know any of what was coming. By 7:15, Imani had been met at the front door by Loretta Sims and handed a folder thick enough to hold a small verdict. Your duties are outlined here, Loretta said in the voice of a woman who had explained things too many times to too many people. Light housekeeping, main wing, and the third floor. Avoid Mr. Callister's office and the medical suite unless directed. The third floor is where Theo stays. He's 9. He has been ill. There was a pause before ill. The kind of pause that carries more than the word itself. You are not to move his medications. You are not to engage Dr. Holden's equipment. Dr. Holden oversees his care. She has been with this family for 4 years. She knows what she is doing. What's his condition? Amani asked. Progressive autoimmune presentation, Loretta said. Complex. Multiple specialists, no resolution. Dr. Holden has been the constant. A pause. The previous housekeeper left without notice. The one before her lasted 5 weeks. This household has been through enough. We need someone reliable. She meant someone who does not ask questions. Amani had heard that language her whole life. In every unit she had worked, every room she had cleaned, every meeting in which someone with a title had told her courteously to stay in her lane. She knew what it cost to listen. She knew what it cost more. She nodded. She followed Loretta toward the stairs. They were halfway up when a voice came from the sitting room doorway. Cool. Already bored. That must be the new one. Imani turned. Woman stood there. Early 50s, cashmere the color of cream, a Cartier bracelet, catching the morning light. Yvette Callister had her brother's bone structure and none of his grief. Her eyes moved over Imani the way eyes move over something assessed, found wanting, and filed away. How long do they usually last, she asked Loretta, the question aimed across Imani as though she were furniture with ears. Loretta said nothing. Imani kept her face neutral. She had not come this far to be small. Yvette turned back into the room without waiting for an answer. They climbed the rest of the stairs in silence. The house felt bigger the higher they went, and colder. On the third floor, the air was stale, the hallway curtains drawn. The walls painted a blue-green meant for a child. Someone had cared enough once to choose that color. The dust on the baseboard said that someone had stopped. Loretta stopped outside a door covered in stickers. Captain America's shield. A golden snitch. A hand-lettered sign and marker. Theo's room. Knock, please. The please had been added in smaller letters, like an afterthought that mattered more than the rest. He's likely resting, Loretta said. Familiarize yourself with the space. Nothing more than dusting and organizing. She handed over the keys. Then, just for a moment, the professional composure shifted. Something old and tired crossed her face. He's a good boy, she said quietly. He's had more taken from him than any child should. Then she was gone. Amani stood alone in front of the stickers, her hand on the doorknob, her heart, for reasons she could not fully name, already paying attention. She opened the door. The room smelled of antiseptic and something floral underneath. Lavender, or something meant to pass for it. The kind of smell that tries to cover another smell and only succeeds in announcing that there is something to cover. It was enormous for one child. Medical equipment lined the far wall, an IV stand, a vitals monitor, machines Amani could make educated guesses about. The bed sat in the center, white and wide, surrounded by pillows. And there, almost lost in the middle of it, was Theo. He was small, smaller than 9 looked. His skin had the particular gray-brown pallor Amani had learned to recognize in 14 years of clinical work. Not the paleness of cold or fear, but the deeper kind, from a body spending more than it has for a very long time. His hair was damp at the temples. On the nightstand, a stuffed bear missing one eye, a plastic cup with a straw, and a row of orange prescription bottles she counted without meaning to. 29. 29 medications for one 9-year-old boy. His eyes were open. He'd been walking since she stepped through the door. Are you going to leave? He asked. His voice was careful, the way the voices of children get careful when they have been disappointed too many times to spend surprise on it. Imani set her supplies down and lowered herself into the chair beside the bed. Hi, she said. I'm Imani. I'm here to help keep your room nice. The last 2 left, Theo said, not accusing. Just reporting. I know, she said. I'm sorry about that. He considered this. His eyes were amber, the kind that shifts depending on the light, or on what was happening behind them. He reached for the stuffed bear and held it against his chest. His name is Captain, he said. He sits with me every time I get sick. A pause. I get sick a lot. Are the medicines helping? She asked gently. Something shifted in those eyes. They're supposed to, he said. Dr. Holden says medicine has to hurt before it helps. A smaller pause. Sometimes I think it just hurts. A cold, quiet thing moved through Amani's chest. She looked at the 20 bottles and let her CNA training surface the way it always did when something felt wrong. Involuntary, like a reflex. 2 immunosuppressants, a beta blocker, 2 anti-nausea compounds. Combinations that made her uneasy in a way she could not yet name, a pattern that did not resolve the way it should. She let it go. She was here to clean. She began with the bookshelf, and they talked while she worked. Theo told her about a dream he'd had where he was running through a field, and the air tasted different than the air in his room. In the dream, he could breathe without thinking about it. He said this like it was remarkable, that breathing could feel like something you didn't have to concentrate on. Amani kept dusting. Her throat was tight. Then Theo said, "Were you ever scared of something you did?" She paused. Her cloth rested on the spine of a book. She thought about a hospital hallway 9 years ago, a nurse running, a question she had not expected to be asked. Once, she said, 9 years ago, I did something that scared me, and I never found out if it helped. Theo turned this over. I think it did, he said simply. Things that scare you usually do. He held Captain a little tighter. Do you think I'll ever run, like in my dream? Amani looked at this boy, 9 years old, and asking it that way, not if he would get better, not if the pain would stop. Just, will I ever run? Will my body ever feel like mine again? I think, she said carefully, that you are going to surprise a lot of people. He almost smiled, the shape of one trying to form. She filed it away, quietly, the way she filed everything that mattered. The next morning at 10:47, Dr. Holden arrived with the smoothie. Tall, precise blonde hair and a tight knot, dressed as though she had a board presentation after this. She carried the green drink in one hand and Theo's chart in the other, moving through the room with the authority of someone who has never had to consider whether she belonged. Good morning, Theo, she said, her voice warm on the surface and something else underneath. Time for your vitamins. Theo drank, slowly, his face doing the small involuntary things faces do when something tastes wrong, but you have been told it is good for you. He finished the glass. Amani kept wiping the windowsill. At 11:23, Theo doubled over. She was at his side before she had decided to move, hands on his back, voice low and steady. It's okay, breathe through it. She pressed 2 fingers against his wrist, pulse irregular, fast, then slow, then fast again. His skin had gone cold and damp. Dr. Holden returned 17 minutes later. She checked his vitals, adjusted a line, made a note. The disease is progressing, she said to no one in particular. His system is fighting the treatment. She did not look at Imani. Imani said nothing. She held Theo's cup while he rinsed his mouth. She watched the doctor write her notes. She thought of what she had now seen 4 consecutive days. Smoothie at 10, sickness by 11:30. The pattern was not subtle. It was metronomic. When Dr. Holden left, Imani stayed with Theo until his breathing evened and his eyes closed. Then she took her phone. She called her cousin Deshaun, pharmacology student, University of Illinois, Chicago, 2 years into his program. She had not spoken to him in months, Deshaun, she said when he answered. I need a favor and I need you not to ask too many questions yet. A child's life might depend on it. A long pause. Then, okay, bring it by tomorrow. She hung up. She stood in the hallway outside Theo's room, her phone still warm in her hand, looking at the closed door of the medical suite 8 feet away, unlocked. The way it sometimes was in the middle of the afternoon, she thought about Janelle, about the cost of knowing something and saying nothing. She took a cotton swab from her supply bag, a small Ziploc from her coat pocket. She looked at the door for one long moment. Then she went in. The medical suite was exactly as it always was. Sterile, organized, a place for everything and everything in its place. The particular order of someone who controlled their environment the way other people controlled their breathing automatically, because the alternative was not something they had allowed themselves to consider. Amani moved quickly. She had 40 minutes. Dr. Holden's afternoon walk was fixed as a train schedule. 3 o'clock, out the side door, down toward the lakefront, phone already at her ear before the door closed. 40 minutes. 43 on a good day. The blender cup was in the sink. Amani stopped. Dr. Holden never left the blender cup in the sink. She hand-washed it immediately after every use and put it in the locked cabinet above the small refrigerator. Amani had cleaned this suite 6 times, and that cup had never once been left out. Today it was sitting in the sink, still wet residue clinging to the interior walls. She leaned over and breathed in. The smell hit her like a fist. Bitter, chemical. Wrong in a way that was not about flavor but about something older, something the body knows before the mind catches up. Not kale, not spinach, not anything that belonged in a glass given to a child. She photographed the cup from 3 angles, collected a sample from the interior wall with a cotton swab, sealed it in the Ziploc. Then she cleaned the cup, dried it, and put it back exactly where Dr. Holden kept it. Then she saw the cabinet, open by 2 inches, not wide. She opened it the rest of the way. Rows of unmarked containers, powders and sealed vials, dried plant material, small bottles of clear liquid, each with a date and black marker. And at the back, a composition notebook, black cover, corners worn soft from handling. She opened it. Dr. Holden's handwriting, neat, clinical, precise. October 14, synthetic cardiac glycoside compound. Dose increased to 0.4 mg daily via morning preparation. Patient presenting, expected symptom cluster, nausea, cardiac irregularity, fatigue. Father continues to attribute to autoimmune progression. No deviation from established pattern. November 2. Patient refused morning preparation twice this week. Compensatory dose administered at 0.6 milligrams in evening preparation. Symptom presentation maintained. New housekeeper showing proximity to patient above expected parameters. Monitor November 9. Housekeeper reassigned following my recommendation to Loretta. Proximity issue resolved. Resuming standard protocol. Imani's vision blurred. She blinked it clear and kept reading. Her body had moved past shaking into something colder and more certain, the way the body gets when it has processed something too large for ordinary feeling and simply decides to function. She turned to an entry dated 14 months earlier. September 3. Beneficiary designation confirmed. Life insurance policy, $0.8 million payable to death of Theo Callister before age 12. Primary caregiver has maintained documented care for minimum 36 consecutive months, 36 months from current date, September of next year. Timeline must be managed accordingly. She read it slowly. Final weight, $1. She read it twice. Policy by Renee Callister in the final weeks of her, when she was dying and trusting, when she believed she was leaving her son in the hands of someone who would protect him. Renee had signed it over out of love, and Dr. Holden had been killing the boy on a schedule ever since. Imani photographed every page, 31 pages, dates, dosages, adjustments made when Theo's body began building tolerance, notes on managing the father's trust. 31 pages of a child's death treated as a project with deliverables and a completion date. She was on the last page when she saw it. Tucked into the back cover, a photocopy of a hospital document, Northwestern Memorial. Date, March 14, 2016. Patient record summary, Callister, cardiac emergency. Blood type B negative. Critical shortage at time of incident. Anonymous donor located on site. Transfusion administered 11:47 p. Stabilized. A note in blue ink, donor requested full anonymity. Female. Present at facility in non-medical capacity. Declined identification. Quote, she said she had not done anything special. Imani stood very still. March 14, 2016, she knew that date. She had been at Northwestern Memorial that night. Not as a nurse, not yet. She had been cleaning the third-floor hallway at 11:30 when a nurse came running from the cardiac unit. Does anyone here know their blood type? We have a patient coding, and the bank is out of B negative. Imani had known her type since she was 16. She had said yes. They had taken her to a side room, given her a form. The nurse had asked if she wanted to know the outcome, if she wanted to be contacted. Imani had thought about it for a long moment. Then she had said, don't tell me if it works. I don't think I could carry it if it didn't. Sign me as anonymous. She had never asked. She had never known. She was looking at the answer now. Renee Callister. That was the name. That was who had needed her blood, who had lived 6 more weeks on what Imani had given without knowing what she was giving it to. 6 weeks long enough to hold Theo once, to name him, to leave the kind of mark on a child that never fully disappears even when the person who made it is gone. Imani sat down on the floor of the medical suite. Her legs simply stopped being available for standing. She sat there holding the photocopy and thought about Theo asking if she would run with him. About Captain, the one-eyed bear. About a birthday card taped to a mirror. Mama says angels find a way. She thought about what Renee must have believed when she signed over that policy, that she was protecting her son, that the woman she trusted would be the reason he survived. She had trusted the wrong person. The right one had just walked through the gate with a canvas bag. Imani stood. She closed the notebook, put it back exactly as she found it, closed the cabinet. She checked that nothing looked disturbed. She picked up her bag. She was not going to be silent. Not this time. Not for this child. Not for the 6 weeks of life she had given, without understanding their value until this moment. She walked out of the medical suite and pulled the door shut behind her. Down the hall, Theo was sleeping. His monitor hummed steady and green, counting out the seconds of a life that someone had decided to end on a schedule. Imani stood in the hallway and listened to it for a long moment. Then she went to find Deshawn's number. Deshawn called back at 11:43 the following night. His voice was not the voice of a pharmacology student doing a favor. Imani, he said, where did you get this? Just tell me what it is. Synthetic cardiac glycoside. Lab-produced digitalis analog. In small doses over a prolonged period, it would present as progressive cardiac involvement, chronic fatigue, autoimmune dysfunction. Exactly like a disease no one could diagnose. He paused. Someone is poisoning that child, Ree. This is deliberate. She had been expecting this since she sealed the Ziploc. How certain are you? I ran it twice. No ambiguity. Go to the police. I need to go to his father first. If I go to the police without him, Holden has 4 years of trust and a dead wife's grief behind her. She'll have a story ready before they finish their notes. I need Dwayne Callister to see this himself. Silence. Then, be careful. She was already off the phone. She checked what she had. 31 pages of notebook photographs, Deshawn's results, the pictures of the blender cup, and in the inner pocket of her coat, the blood donor receipt from Northwestern Memorial that she had carried for 9 years in a folder of things she could not throw away. She put it in her pocket that evening, without fully knowing why. She understood now. It was 11:58 when she came through the gate. The house was dark except for 2 windows. She crossed the entryway toward the hallway that led to Dwayne's study. 4 steps from the hallway, Yvette appeared. Silk robe, a glass of wine, the same assessing eyes. Where do you think you're going? I need to speak with Mr. Callister. At midnight. Yvette moved forward, placing herself between Amani and the hallway. My brother is exhausted. Whatever this is, you take it to Dr. Holden in the morning. Theo has a qualified doctor who has given 3 years to this family. The help does not go to him at midnight with. She stopped. Something in Imani's face. Imani did not know what she looked like in that moment. She only knew what she felt. Past fear, past every version of herself that had ever been told to stay in a lane and had obeyed. She had sat on the floor of that medical suite. She had read 31 pages. She had read Renee's name on a hospital form and understood exactly what it cost. Ma'am, she said, and her voice was quiet, the way things that are absolutely certain can afford to be quiet. I am going to speak to your brother tonight. You can hear it at the same time or not, but I am going to speak to him. Yvette looked at her, really looked, for the first time. Then she stepped aside. Dwayne answered on the second knock, shirt untucked, eyes carrying the weight of a man who had been awake inside his own head too long. He stepped aside without asking why. She showed him the notebook entries. October 14, the dosage logs, the symptom tracking. Father continues to attribute to autoimmune progression. She watched the color leave his face in stages. Then the September 3 entry. The 1.8 million to policy. The 36-month timeline. He took the phone from her hands. He read it twice. His jaw tightened. This is Renee's policy. He set it up before she died. She wanted Holden to be taken care of. If Theo died, Amani said. The words sat in the room. She didn't sign it to pay for his death, he said, his voice very low. She signed it to thank her for trying to prevent it. I know. She trusted the wrong person. She did it out of love. Dwayne set the phone on the desk, both hands flat on the surface, head lowered. Then Amani placed the last thing beside it. The blood donor receipt. Northwestern Memorial Hospital. March 14, 2016. Blood type B negative. Emergency donation. Recipient. Cardiac patient. Female. Critical. And at the bottom, the note from Holden's cabinet. Donor requested full anonymity. Declined identification. Quote, she said she had not done anything special. He looked at it. He did not understand immediately. She waited. I was cleaning the 3rd floor hallway that night, she said. A nurse came out asking for B negative. I said yes. I asked them not to tell me if it worked because I didn't think I could carry it if it didn't. I signed as anonymous. Dwayne looked up from the receipt. His eyes found hers and he went completely still. That was you. Not a question. I didn't know her name until 3 days ago. He had looked for 9 years. He had paid an investigator to find her, been told she had declined, closed the file, kept the grief open. She had been 2 blocks from this house. She had walked through his gate. She had been told to stay in her lane. Dwayne sat down slowly. He pressed one hand over his mouth. His eyes went bright and the set of his shoulders broke open. Not violently, not all at once, but the way old structures give way when the last thing holding them finally lets go. She gave Renee back to me, he said, his voice barely a sound, and I almost threw her out of my house. In the doorway, Yvette stood absolutely still. She had followed. She had heard everything. For the first time since Amani had arrived, she had nothing to say. We need to get Theo out tonight, Amani said quietly. Before morning. Before Holden knows anything has changed. He was already standing, 3 calls in 11 minutes. His physician, Rush University Medical Center, his attorney. He went upstairs and carried Theo to the car the way you carry something you almost lost and cannot stop confirming is still there. Theo stirred in the half voice of a child pulled from sleep. Where are we going? To get you better, Dwayne said. His voice broke on the last word. Really better this time. They drove through empty 1:17 a.m. streets, the city dark around them. In the back seat, Theo held Captain against his chest and Amani sat beside him with her hand on his. Nobody spoke. Nothing needed to be said. At 6:09 the following morning, Dr. Patrice Holden was detained at O'Hare International Airport at Gate C-14, 2 checked bags beside her, a boarding pass for Miami in her hand. She had noticed the empty bed at dawn, the disconnected monitors, the silence. She had packed without hurrying. The arresting officer noted she did not appear surprised, only that the timeline had arrived sooner than she had planned for. It had. The timeline was someone else now. 4 months later, the garden at the Callister estate was being tended again. Someone had cut the grass back, turned the flower beds, replanted the rose bushes along the south wall. The basketball that had sat waterlogged near the path since October had been replaced with a new one, orange and bright, that Theo kicked around the driveway most mornings before his tutoring session, his legs still learning their full strength but learning faster every week. It was a Tuesday in late April. The cherry trees along the lakefront path were in full bloom, the kind of pink that only lasts a week before the wind takes it, that you have to stop and look at or you miss it entirely. Theo had stopped. He was standing in the middle of the garden path, with his head tilted back, eyes closed, face turned up to the light, just feeling the warmth of it on his skin. Imani watched from the porch steps. She was not wearing her uniform. She had not worn it in 6 weeks, since Dwayne had pushed an envelope across the kitchen table, not the formal office, the kitchen, where Dottie's lemon cake sat cooling on the counter, and asked her to stay. Inside the envelope was a letter on Rush Lakeshore Medical Tower letterhead, confirming the Renee Callister Nursing Fund, a full scholarship to the RN program at University of Illinois Chicago, fall semester. Imani Voss named as the inaugural recipient. "You gave my wife 14 months, he had said. "Let me help you build the rest of your life," she had cried. She was not ashamed of it. Dr. Patrice Holden had been charged with attempted murder, aggravated battery, and insurance fraud. Her trial was set for the fall. The prosecution had 31 pages of her own careful handwriting and a 47-entry log kept by a 9-year-old boy whose hand had grown too weak to write 3 months before anyone came to look. Imani had given that log to the detective. The detective had read it without speaking for a long moment. Then, "This is the clearest evidence we have. And it came from a child." "Yes," Imani had said. It did. 1 week after the arrest, Yvette Callister had come to find Imani alone. No audience, no ceremony. She had placed an envelope on the kitchen table without explaining it. Inside was a check, enough to cover the remaining rent Imani owed on West Huron Street and 6 months of Dottie's medication. Yvette had stood at the door for a moment before leaving. "I was wrong about you," she said. She did not turn around. Then she was gone. It was the only apology Imani needed. Theo ran up to the porch steps, breathless, cheeks flushed with the particular pink of someone whose blood was doing what blood was supposed to do. "Did you see me?" He was grinning, a real grin, unself-conscious, the kind that had been coming more easily every week. "I made it to the gate and back without stopping." "That's the farthest yet," Imani said. She felt her throat tighten the way it still did sometimes, watching him move through space like he owned it. Theo sat beside her on the step, his shoulder against her arm, captain tucked under one elbow. He looked out at the cherry trees. "Then, Miss Imani, do you think my mom knew about you?" She considered this carefully. "I think your mom loved you so much she would have done anything to make sure you were safe. And maybe she found a way, just not the way she planned." Theo nodded the slow nod of a child accustomed to things not going as planned. "She was right, though," he said. "About angels." Imani looked at him. He looked back with those amber eyes. "She said angels, find a way. You found a way. So she was right." Imani put her arm around his shoulders. He leaned in without self-consciousness, the way children lean when they have decided someone is safe. They sat like that in the April light, the cherry blossoms moving overhead, and said nothing, because nothing needed to be said. Dwayne appeared at the door behind them with 2 glasses of lemonade and the expression of a man who had recently rediscovered that the world contains things worth showing up for. He had taken a leave of absence from Callister Freight. He had learned to cook 3 things Theo wanted to eat. He drove him to school 4 days a week and sat in the car at the end of the day like every other parent. He sat on the step below them. He asked about the dog again. Theo said immediately. "We're still working on that," Dwayne said. Theo accepted this with the patience of someone who has learned that waiting is not the same as being forgotten. That night, after Theo was asleep, without medication, without monitors, just a boy tired from running, sat at the small desk in her room with her UIC enrollment confirmation on her laptop and her mother on the phone. Dottie said, "Baby, I am so proud of you." Imani looked at her hands in the lamplight, the hands that had cleaned floors, held Theo's cup, pressed 2 fingers against his wrist in the dark, carried a receipt in a coat pocket for 9 years without understanding its value. "I'm not done yet," she said. "I know," Dottie said. "That's what I'm proud of." After she hung up, the quiet settled around her. She thought about Janelle, not the hospital, not the end, but Janelle at 19, the way she laughed. The way she would have found something to say about all of this that was both entirely right and funnier than it had any right to be. She thought about what losing her had cost, and what that loss had given back. Slowly, over years, the way a scar gives you the precise outline of something that happened and does not let you forget its shape. She was not healed. She knew that. There were still nights when the hospital came back in her sleep, still mornings when she reached for the grief before she reached for anything else. But tonight she felt something she had not felt in 5 years. Not happiness exactly. Closer to wholeness, The sense that the broken parts of her had broken in a specific direction, toward something, toward this child asleep down the hall, toward this house learning to breathe again, toward her mother's voice. She closed the laptop, she turned off the lamp. She thought about a woman she had never met and would never meet, who had believed in angels and left instructions for one, trusting that love would find a way to deliver them. She had been right. On Dwayne's desk downstairs, beneath the photograph of Renee laughing with the pregnancy test, was a sheet of paper he had printed that afternoon and not yet put away. It was Theo's essay from his first week back at school. The assignment, write about someone you admire. The paper had an A+ in red pen at the top. The last two lines read, "My hero doesn't wear a cape. She wore an apron and she refused to look away. Her name is Imani, and I think my mama sent her." This story is fiction, but the people who inspired it are real. Right now, across the United States, more than 1.5 million certified nursing assistants go to work every day in homes, hospitals, and care facilities. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median wage for a CNA in 2024 was $17.40 an hour, below the living wage in every major American city. They are among the most underpaid, least protected workers in healthcare, and they are often the ones who know their patients best. In 2023, a federal whistleblower case in Illinois documented a caregiver who reported medication irregularities at a private care facility and was dismissed within 2 weeks. The patient she had flagged was hospitalized 3 months later. The caregiver received no legal protection because the facility employed fewer than 50 people, the threshold required under current OSHA statutes. The gap between who notices and who has the power to act is real. It costs people their lives. Imani is fictional, but her instinct, her training, her fear, and her choice to speak anyway, those belong to every person who has ever stood in a hallway knowing something was wrong and had to decide what that knowledge was worth. This story is for them. Before you go, I need to ask you something. Has there ever been a moment in your life when you knew something was wrong? When every instinct you had was telling you to speak, to act, to refuse to look away, but the easier thing, the safer thing, was to stay quiet. Most of us have been there. And most of us know the weight of both choices. The weight of speaking when no one wants to hear it, and the heavier weight, the one that doesn't leave, of staying silent when it mattered. Imani Voss is not a superhero. She is a woman who lost her sister because she was too afraid to speak and who spent 9 years deciding that she would never let that fear win again. She is a woman who took 2 buses to a job she needed, in a coat that was too thin for April, and walked through a gate and paid attention when no one asked her to. That is all she did. She paid attention, she refused to look away. And it changed everything. If this story moved you, if you felt something sitting with Theo, and Imani on those porch steps in the April light, or in that midnight hallway, when she walked past you and knocked on that door, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now. Tell me where in the world you are watching from, what time it is there, and which moment in this story stayed with you the longest. Because these stories travel, they find people who need them. And every comment, every share, every person who passes this along to someone else is part of how they reach the right hands. If you are not yet subscribed, please do. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because new stories go up every week, and every one of them is about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. The kind of people who don't make the headlines, but change the lives of everyone around them. Like and share this video if it meant something to you. Not for the bosses, for the person in your life who needs to remember that their voice matters, that what they see matters, that the courage to speak, even when it costs something, is never wasted. We will see you in the next story. Stay kind, stay blessed, and never underestimate the power of one quiet act of love.